This was in the early 90s. The job market wasn't very good. I took an entry-level position at Rowman Littlefield Publishers, which is a commercial scholarly publisher based just outside of DC. I started as an editorial assistant, and about 9 years later, I was vice president. Then I went to be director, so that's a commercial, private sector job, and then I went to the University Press of Kentucky, where I was director for 14 years, and I started just about 4 years ago at Notre Dame. When I say it's not intuitive, I need to add that but it makes perfect sense. Acquisitions editors don't make their decisions random. Okay, and I'm trying to explain how we get to that catalog that you should have in front of you. Okay? A few things you need to know that every acquisitions editor thinks every day when he or she sits down at the desk. First thing you need to know is that the volume of proposals that we receive is enormous. Notre Dame Press publishes approximately 50 titles a year. We have a full-time staff of 15, and we get over 1,000 submissions to consider for publication. Now, don't let that scare you, because at least half, if not more, are right out of the gate not appropriate scholarly publications. So it's not a pure number, but I would estimate we peer review 200 a year. And that's at proposal stage, but also a manuscript stage. So, I mean, we could do that. I've done this before. During the course of my presentation, I sometimes ask people to guess how many proposals I'll receive in the next hour. It's been as low as 2 or 3. It's been as high as 20. All day, all night. So you need to get that into your head. When you're talking with an acquisitions editor, they're overwhelmed. If they're not overwhelmed, they're not good acquisitions editors. Okay, that's the very nature of what we do. Another thing that most people aren't aware of in publishing now, and again, I've been doing this 25 years, and I would say publishing, there's all kinds of publishing, trade publishing, journals publishing, magazines, but I'm speaking specifically about academic scholarly books. So just when I say publishing, that's what I mean. Every book we sell, we must sell it. We're required to sell it at least a 50% discount off of list price. Most academics aren't aware of this. Amazon will not put our books up for sale unless we give them a 55% discount. Okay? And I'm going to come down hard on Amazon. If you all leave, except graduate students are exempt. Graduate students get to order from Amazon, but professionals should not. So there. Because you're hurting yourselves and you're hurting posterity there, I said. All right, we'll come back to that. So, we publish a book that's $10. It's $4.50 that we have to then earn our investment back. Okay? I mean, it's one of the few businesses where the sellers determine the cost of doing business. So we have to adjust our prices accordingly. And we hear more and more complaints about the costs of books. 55% is the average discount mandated by the sellers, not by the publishers. What does it cost to publish a typical scholarly book? You have peer review. You have, if it's accepted, it goes to an editorial board. Every university press has these. That's one thing that's universal with university presses is it goes through peer review. There's usually almost always a faculty board that then must vote and approve upon these. proposals. If it's accepted, you have copy editing, you have design, you have proofreading, you have royalties sometimes. I'll come back to royalties later. Review copies, warehousing, shipping, ebooks you have to digitize and format. When the dust settles, it costs approximately, oh, you have salaries, you have benefits, you have your space. I mean, indirect and overhead expenses. Overhead being salaries and benefits, direct for everything else we have to do. I'm going to say it costs between $15,000 and $20,000 to publish your average 300-page book. Okay? And how do we know that? We know every penny we spend every year. We know how many books we've published during that year, and it's simple division. Okay? $15,000 in direct and overhead expenses. Printing, binding, everything. Longer books are $20,000. Some books are, so it varies. But that's an average. And when I started at Rowman and Littlefield in the 90s, before the internet, before Amazon, really, book sales were actually performed through human communication. Most libraries would have standing orders. So that catalog, those books are still in production. They're not available yet. They're the newest catalog. So you start advertising and promoting books a full year out before they're even available, accumulating what we call back orders. Now, in '95, before a book was out, we have anywhere from 300 to 600 standing orders. Oh, come on in. 300, 600 standing orders before the book was even available. And then when the book was available and we had to come up with a print run, we'd have an idea of how the book would do. And that was in the days when you had to make accurate print runs. If you do too few, you can't print more because it destroys the profit you made on the ones you've already sold. If you've done too many, you have to destroy them and write off the value of that inventory. So it was a guess. But there were formulas that we had and employed, and then that all changed. It all changed. All those formulas, although they are irrelevant. So now, I remember I have a good friend at Oxford. Oxford would have at least 1,000 to 1,500 orders for every book they published, because it was Oxford. Cambridge, the same thing. Their numbers, those numbers are now under 100. Wow. Easily, way under 100 for Oxford. Because here's what's happened. As library acquisitions budgets have been slashed, libraries are forming consortia. They're buying one copy and sharing it among 30 libraries. And now they're usually buying one electronic copy, which they're sharing. So that sort of guaranteed revenue, the hope was that would cover your expenses. It does not anymore. Those orders do not exist. In fact, orders don't come in now, for the most part, certainly from Amazon and most vendors, until the book's available. So you have no indication of how it's going to be purchased. At least back in the day, we knew libraries, if you had 500 back orders, you knew that a typical monograph in its first year would sell 60% of its total lifetime sales. Therefore, you would print this many that would hold you to the second year, and then you would do the paperback, and that would be your revenue. And in a commercial house like Rowman and Littlefield or Sage, your fidelity is to the bottom line. If you are not making money, you don't have a job. So this is how I learned the business. And again, as I said, I worked closely with Ted. But my passion as someone who wanted to be a professor was always the ideas, right? Always the discourse, the conversation and disciplines. That's what really drives me. So I went to University Press of Kentucky. Kentucky had a full-time staff of 18. We published about 70 books per year. And again, I was director for about 14 years. So, just to circle back, think about the volume. And now I'm giving you a 55% discount. Here's another thing. And about 15,000, we'll just say 15,000 for an average monograph. An average monograph now sells about 150 to 250 copies. We consider 250 a good book. But think about that. Now again, just for a second, think about that. If it's a $50 book at a 50% discount, 25 times 250 is what? It ain't 15,000. And that's what all publishers are dealing with. Okay? And the subtext here is how should we value scholarship? Is it purely by sales, or is it something else? And how do we measure it? Because everyone wants metrics. Right? University press directors used to say things like, "We lose money wisely." Yeah, no, if I said that to my provost, you would see my butt flying over the Golden Dome on my way to my next job. Oh, it's okay. I'm losing it wisely. Yeah.
So even the rich schools, I think I went to Notre Dame, so I mean no aspersions here, but they got to put endowment. They can't afford to talk that way, and Yale and Harvard and those guys.
Good question. Most of those places have endowments.
Right.
That are separate from the university. That allow them.
Press endowments, I see.
Press endowments. Most places do not have that. Princeton, Harvard, Yale have endowments that are dedicated to their publishing imprints that help them with their operating expenses. But it was always understood there are about 125 university presses in North America, right? Based on the Association of University Presses. It was always understood, the idea, the founding idea, the founding principle of university presses was these books, this scholarship, should not be evaluated solely on its sales potential. It has a value for posterity. It is our job to identify it, peer review it, improve it, and disseminate it to the largest possible audience. And every university press did receive not an endowment, but a subsidy. And that was natural. I think the oldest running university press in the country right now is either Hopkins or Cornell. They came out in the 1876 period. So this was considered the foundation of scholarship. Important caveat. I am mostly speaking to humanities and social sciences. But just good question, and I'm going to come back. So, talked about the volume, I've talked about discounts. Most academics don't understand, also, part of doing business, is that vendors can return books at any time for all refund. So we're dealing with predatory discounts, and then, on top of it, if they order 300 books and sell 100, it's perfectly all right to return 200. At Kentucky, my first 6 months, does anyone remember, what was it? Wasn't Walden? It was, which one? Waters? No, it was after, you're making my point. How many of these places exist now, right? That's the thing. It wasn't Walden, but Borders. Did someone say Borders?
It's okay.
Yeah, but Borders owed the University Press of Kentucky in the order of $205,000. This is in 2001. It's a $2 million press in terms of its annual revenue. That's 10% of our revenue was tied up by Borders in books that they had in stores over 90 days. Courtesy, etiquette, is that 90 days you either pay or return. So had my business people contact Borders, and you can't ask for $200,000. But you can say, can you $5,000 or $10,000 a month because it's affecting our cash flow. Can you, pay us something so we can pay our copy editors and our cover designers, right? Because we can't pay them unless we're, true story, I'm not the only one this happened to. Person makes the call. 2 weeks later, 2 trucks show up from Borders and return $205,000 worth of inventory. And then they reorder it. So we have to pay for the shipping. We have to put it back up on the shelves. We have to pull it back down from the shelves, and we have to pay for the shipping back out. And these are books that don't sell. This is what your editor's thinking. This is why I want to be here, because people automatically assume if their book doesn't get accepted, it's because the editor doesn't like it, or it's not good enough. And these are the things I want people to understand, because it has changed so much, and I'll get deeper into it. Yeah, Ted.
So 2 questions. One is, I know that Amazon's the big dog, but are the dogs playing the same game? So Barnes & Noble has basically the same?
Well, now Amazon, interestingly, is doing bricks and mortar stores.
Yeah.
It's a moving target. I mean,
but they all expect 55% discount. And
Well, don't get me going yet on Amazon. Just let's save that for the end, because I got horror stories about Amazon. And Amazon is everyone's biggest customer. Every publisher.
right.
Their biggest vendor is Amazon.
It's bigger than what in Nashville that distributes books.
Ingram.
Bookstore. Ingram.
Ingram's a distributor.
Right.
Ingram pushes them out to Amazon, who pushes them to the consumer.
Okay.
It's kind of although Ingram, this is a good
But
question.
you're still selling your books to Ingram. In other words, you're trying to pitch them to Ingram, right?
Oh yeah.
And they can buy X number or X plus 100.
Right, but they can return them too. We're trying to predict what their demand will be. So yeah, no, Ingram, and a former intern of mine in Kentucky is now vice president at Ingram. Ingram may be the one place that can compete with Amazon, and that's the trajectory they're going. So it's a good. Ingram is something besides a distributor, and it's helping publishers. So.
But do the editors that are acquiring these books, do they come across a manuscript where they know that because of this market, they're not going to sell more than 110 copies, and they think that's appropriate because it's an important book and they want to be associated with it, and so they figure out.
You're about
costs.
7 steps ahead, as you always are. No, you're exactly right. That's what the good editors do. You're anticipating the conclusion. How do we respond to this?
Well, you made this statement. It doesn't mean that your book is not good. It just means that, and that was left unsaid. What is it left unsaid? Is it that we can't sell enough to justify it, or is it what are you looking for if not sales?
That's what differs between editors. That's what differs between the size of presses. That differs. That's why it's important to choose the right publisher, the right editor. Because someone will say, this isn't going to sell enough to justify our expense and effort. But 80% or more of our books that I published at Kentucky at Notre Dame don't ever generate the revenue it costs to publish them. How do I deal with that? Look in your catalog. I subsidized 14 years of scholarship at Kentucky by publishing books on bourbon and horses.
Jeez.
And now I'm subsidizing Notre Dame by publishing beautiful books on Notre Dame. An affluent, insanely loyal alumni base. I went there my first football Saturday. There was a line out the bookstore with people just throwing money trying to get Notre Dame, anything with Notre Dame on it. And our press had never published a book about Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And see, but when we started, we called this regional trade. When these things, the first one was UNC Press, one of the best, university presses in the country. It published Mama Dip's cookbook. Mama Dip was a little restaurant in Chapel Hill, New York Times bestseller. And then I was sitting around my office in Lexington one day, and I got California's catalog, UC Press, good press. They had all these books on wine. And I thought to myself, what do we have in Kentucky? Because we all steal from each other mercilessly, but it's, if you like bourbon, if you like horses, we published 2 or 3 books a year that would then subsidize the other 45.
Wow.
You follow? You got the light on, right? That's because those other books. Then how do we select those other 45 or 46? That's what I'm doing.
So all of us are wanting to get to the 45 because we're not going to be in the 2.
Well,
Right. So
every list, at least in my opinion, Ted, every list should have a mix.
We got 2 Domers here, but we're not planning on writing football.
Oh, how'd you know I was going to publish a few books on football? That was a pretty good guess, man.
Notre Dame.
You're pretty sharp over there, Notre Dame football.
They don't play.
Yeah, we got like 3 in the works. We've done 2 books. We've done 2 books on Notre Dame's history. Last year was the 175th anniversary. And in one of those catalogs, you'll see a book called This Place Called Notre Dame. It's from the editor of the Notre Dame magazine, who's been there a long time, and the photographer. Those 2 books alone have sold about 20,000 copies. But then we hope to find what we call the mid-list. It's the crossover. It's a good topic written in an accessible fashion for people who are scholars, but they get adopted in classrooms as supplemental texts. So we're trying to create a balance across that list. That's what I think the best editors do.
Well, meanwhile, the faculty who are wanting to place a book are interested. I mean, we're not interested in sales as much as we are the prestige of the press in our own discipline to get tenure or to get promotion, right? So you're thinking, okay, what's our discussion about the book that Encounter is doing, right? I mean, if I were at Seaver College, I would not have gone with Encounter because I'm wanting an academic press, because that's what they care about more at Seaver, and the School of Public Policy, they don't care about that as much.
How many books a year does Pepperdine University Press put out?
It doesn't have a press.
Oh my!
Oh, no.
Are the faculty?
1 or 2, because we just published
David Baird.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I was being sassy and you shut
Well,
me down.
the first book they published was Roots of American Order by Russell Kerr.
Effectively, the only thing,
With open
it exists, but only it only exists when we need it to exist. There's not a, it's not really.
Okay, I got caught. I never get nailed on this, but I got nailed this time. My point is, who here in the humanities and social sciences needs to publish with a university press in order to get promotion and tenure?
Everyone.
But you don't have your own university press. There's 125 university presses in North America, totally buttressing the entire promotion and tenure system in higher education. There are over 3,000 institutions in the United States that require their faculty in the humanities and social sciences to publish at university presses. So why is Notre Dame? I don't publish Notre Dame authors. I do if they're senior. But if you're at Notre Dame and you're up for tenure, it's not in your best professional interest to publish at Notre Dame. You need the external recognition. So we can't even publish our own faculty. I'm just trying to tell you what we're thinking about. I'm not trying to think. Because, and then I'm going to tell you how to solve it. That's the main reason I'm here. But, okay, and here, here's the last thing that we all have to deal with. Okay. Well, because people ask me, what are my royalties going to be? Car? These are the first. No, you know now, but they don't know. And they say, and I say, it's called tenure. It's a job for life. That's your compensation. And and it was actually the guy who was at Cambridge, Bateman,
Oh, yeah, Blue Bay.
did a calculation of what an average tenured faculty member in the humanities and social sciences makes over the course of their career. It's like, that's your compensation. So, but I will get into the details. But here's another thing just to consider. And this happened to me at Kentucky. It has not happened to me at Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's a different culture and a different environment. But at Kentucky State-run institution, governor tried to shut it down last year. Single-handedly tried to shut down the University of Kentucky Press. In the last 5 years, 7 or 8 university presses have closed their doors. Northern Illinois University Press, one of really good publisher in American political thought, Lincoln Studies, deemed non-essential last year. Their backlist of books is as good as any press. It's a small press, but very important. The cheerleading squad gets more subsidy than the press, but the press is gone. So it's about priorities, and again, how do you value and measure impact? So in Kentucky, my first year, I don't know if I ever told you this story, true story. So I come from a commercial publisher, and if I don't make a certain amount of profit, I lose my job. That's it. And we were all about growth at Roman and Littlefield. So I get to Kentucky, and in my first full fiscal year, I turned a profit. The first profit since the press was founded in 1943. Right? It was near murder, but I could do it. I knew what to do coming from the private sector. And this is things about managing inventory value. This isn't just about publishing better books. This is about how to look at the business. And I was young at that time, and I remember I reported to the provost, and I said, along the lines of, aren't I a genius? Aren't you glad you hired me? I'm the man. And he said, you're so cool. So what we had made was, I can't remember it anymore, it was like $48,919, 12 cents. He said, you're so good that we're going to cut you $48,919 to the penny. I lost in funding what I made in profit. That's how most state presses run. So in volume, discounts, returns, all this stuff, if I show growth, they take funding. So I can't even grow the press. It's like a Soviet system, it's just, pretty rough. That's what you need to know. But it's you can solve it. But so when academics come to me and they say, but it's the most important book in the world, I say, well, that's mandatory. I'm not even going to look at it if it's not the most important book in your field. That's mandatory, that's crucial. Can I sell it? And that's when, and in the old days, it's much better now. But in the old days, when I used to mention things like sales to some of the older generation of academics, they'd be like, how banal can you be? I cannot believe that you would measure my brilliance by sales. This is, and I recoil. And I still, every once in a while, someone will come in and say, how can you put numbers on my brilliance? Well, there's another publisher in the next you go talk to him because I'm not doing business. I have 15 people with children who want to put their kids through college. These are the things every editor is dealing with. So, where does that leave us? I can't even make a profit, or I'll be punished. It's different in Notre Dame. Very entrepreneurial, and one of the things I negotiated, you learn a lot over the years. I negotiated, if I make money, I want to be able to pour it back into the business. And they were like, perfect. And this year we started our first endowment because I made money. Rather than sending it back to the administration, they allowed me to establish an endowment that will help support us in the future. But that's not, that's the exception. All right, so it's pretty bad for editors in terms of what the climate we're trying to sell books in. And now the question is, how do you get published?
And where do you get published?
And where do you get published?
Right, because presumably it matters from both points of view. If you don't have anything in American politics, and you got a great book on American politics coming your way, you say no, right? Because you don't have any profile in that field, so you couldn't sell as well as North Carolina.
That's close, and yes, but how do we get into fields like I'm trying now that Notre Dame has traditionally never been in? So you have to figure out, you're not just always required to be in those areas. There's a couple things that people have to know, and I'm looking at you because you're the graduate student, right? These guys are, well, you're a graduate student too, but
I
you've
straddle
published,
both
you're both,
I straddle.
but you're thinking about going academic. You said the key thing. Not every publisher can publish the same book the same way. It's impossible. And I joke, if I had published the Da Vinci Code at Notre Dame, and it looked, everything was exactly the same except it said Notre Dame on the spine and it had a different ISBN, I would have sold 200 or 300 copies. Because humans aren't making the decisions anymore. Okay? They're not. This is why publishing is really kind of, this is what has changed. It has changed more, I say it's changed more in the last 5 years than the previous 5 centuries. Because now it's dictated by algorithms. Now we don't even speak to people. Back in the day, I used to read twice a year. You come out with catalogs, we still do it. You come out, every press would come out with a catalog twice a year. And then your salesperson would go to our major accounts, Borders, Barnes & Noble, all these places, and you'd wait in line with all the other sales directors from all the other university presses, and you'd catch up on gossip and talk, and then you would go into the cubicle. There'd be a person in that cubicle, and you would see, stacks of catalogs with stickies coming out of them. And, we put a lot into these catalogs. Copy and cover design. I mean, there's no mistakes. I mean, everything has been debated and discussed and pondered. And we get about 5 minutes at most to present an entire season's worth of books. And if you all look here, what's the first thing you see in a catalog on the page? Up on top of any page, just pick a page.
Oh, the subject?
You see the category. All right, and what that salesperson would do is say, okay, Irish studies, right? It's right there. That's and they'd say Irish studies, and then they'd go into their sales files, and they pull up every book that Notre Dame has ever published in Irish studies, and they would look at the sales. They would not evaluate the book on its own merits. They didn't look at the cover design because it's beautiful. They're not looking at these great blurbs. They are looking at the category and the price, and at the success of previously published books. And then they would, without knowing anything, they'd say, if it's Irish studies, it's an area we're good in, they'd say, we'll take 200. If we tried to go into an area in which we had no background, they would say, we pass. You couldn't, back in the day, you would talk to a person, they'd own their own independent bookstore, they knew their demographic, they knew their audience. And you'd say, well, take this, well, I'll take 10. No, take 50 on this one. And then, sometimes they'd say, I'll take 100. You say, no, take 20. Because it's in no one's best interest to do these returns financially, right? So you'd have a conversation about how many to print and order, and that's how the business ran. But that was up until about 7 or 8 years ago, I should say now. And then, of course, if they overordered, you didn't have a good sales manager who knew what they were doing and talking and had the discounts and, we have to evaluate, we have to anticipate how our salespeople are gonna look at it and how the buyers are gonna look at it. That's what we're thinking. And if they overorder, we get returns. Now, it's all about metadata. Okay? It's all an algorithm. Amazon won't allow you to speak to a human. It's all through an interface. And it's all based on keywords and metadata. And now we're even making authors do keywords for every chapter. To do summaries of every chapter, because now we're selling electronic copies of chapters. But if you don't get into if your thing doesn't get into the algorithm,
It's invisible.
it's invisible. There's nothing you can do. So, that's what that is publishing in 2018. And this is scholarly books. That's, now, as gloomy and sort of, gloomy, well, I'll leave it at that, as this situation is, it also allows authors to figure out how to get in to the right publisher. If you know that we're looking at algorithms and the sales of previously published titles, the best place to look is in your own bibliography. Who's publishing the books that you're reading? That's where you need to submit your. But there's always other factors. My advice to graduate students especially, but also to published faculty or junior faculty, whatever, when you go to your conferences, spend time in the book exhibit hall, get their catalogs, read about the series. It's time. Academics no longer have the luxury of sending out 10 proposals to whatever press seems good. Do your homework. It's almost like, because I just went through this with my 18-year-old, it's almost like a college application. You need to make the case. You need to anticipate these questions and concerns. And the more eloquent and articulate you are addressing these concerns in your cover letter or proposal, the farther along your proposal is going to be. Does that make sense? And if I had a dime for every time I'd get an email, and all they did was change the grading. Do they send it to 9 or 10? Yeah.
So I have a comment and a question.
Yes.
Let's play a game. So my firstborn daughter is about to be a published author. I'm going to let you guess what her topic is. She has a 3-book deal with Penguin, and her first advance was 6 figures. She's 30 years of age. What is my daughter's topic?
Dating.
Well, that's trade now, if it's Penguin.
Mm-hmm.
This
is my daughter, my firstborn daughter, Anna. It's on point. It'll go to my next one. But it's on point because when you're talking about like 50 or 100 books, and it's endlessly frustrating for me that this content has the kind of demand it does, and that
I see.
books on death and Irish history don't.
I was going to say angels, but then I said, wait, who am I talking about? That was your daughter. I don't want to criticize. I have no idea.
Okay, so she is an animal rights advocate. She has 800,000 followers on Instagram, and her topic is kittens. Neonatal kitten rescue. And cute little pictures of kittens, and my daughter holding kittens, and how to rescue kittens, and 6-figure deal, and to the bank she goes.
It's free.
And she's got a 3-book deal. The second book she just finished is for children. The first one is for adults, Tiny but Mighty, coming to a bookstore near you. So interesting, right? So my question for you then is...
Just before you say that, you used to have a joke, the trilogy of successful books was puppies, the Civil War, and Nazis. Yeah.
There you go.
So we used to joke about this stuff.
Into the Civil War.
Puppies, a Civil War puppy with a Nazi background.
I'm going to go start writing that book.
But this was about about 20 years ago now, but we were that cynical back then. Like, it's
Yeah.
about puppies. So anyhow, so what's the question?
It's interesting. So my question is about airport stores and the role of distribution channels regarding that in terms of academic books, because we all know that is where people, captive audience. I know that's really expensive bookshelf
It's very
facing out, and people grab that. So I'd love to hear about how that intersects.
That comes back to some very basic questions, again, that people aren't aware of. When you go into the bookstore and you see the tables, you see the featured books, those aren't because someone at the store likes them or thinks they're going to sell more. That's because the publisher increased the discount for that kind of coverage. So when books are face out, instead of a 55% discount, they offered a 57% discount so that in 50 stores they would be face out. It's that, so, but the holy grail of business books, of course, is the yearbook. And that is high money. I mean, how does that happen? You publish with someone who has a track record, but it's a really hard sort of market to break into. And I've done it once or twice, but kind of peripherally, like leadership of military. I did a lot of military history in Kentucky. That was part of, that was before I got there. Leadership qualities of military leaders. One of my lead titles is on Colin Powell's leadership. We're hoping to get that into the airports.
So is it because those are leadership books and airports have business travelers?
That's the
So
question.
it's not whether it's a university press, it's about topic that they'll...
It's about how connected your sales reps are and what kind of success you've had in the past. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit on print on demand
Well-
services and how that's impacting academic publishing and this bottom line.
It's probably going to save academic publishing, print on demand, and I would say right now, 75–80% of our books are print on demand. By print on demand, we mean literally printing books to the orders. What once happened, and this is what England has done, this is why they're major players. When I was in Kentucky, this is just an example, and I wish I had the map, I didn't want to change subject, but getting those books into those bookstores, if that's what matters to you, you need to go and look at who's in the spine and who the agents are.
Yeah.
Because every book, every trade book will have an acknowledgement section that thanks their agent. And agents like publishers have certain niches. And that's what I would encourage you to look for, because they won't sign up a book that they can't place with a publisher that can't put it into, because they're getting 15% of your royalties. So that's what you're looking for, someone who's going to agent it. But two stories to illustrate and maybe answer your question. At Kentucky, I published a book on a neighborhood in Frankfort, Kentucky. Scholarship, great peer reviews. Comparable books sell 200, maybe 300. Interesting topic. It was an emphasis on an African American community that was destroyed, and then they built pretty much the city over the land. Printed 300. You need copies for the author, review copies to go out. So you never print what you're selling. You have extras. Well, the guy was a real self-promoter. He set up a bunch of events, and lectures, and he put a carton in his trunk. Oh, we love guys. Oh, we love self-promoters and publishing. And now we're asking, I'll come back to it, but we're asking authors how savvy they are.
To work with you, yeah.
This fella, and he'd be like, 50 more, and he traveled the state, 50 more. And we burned through 300, and then I had to print it, I'm like, it's already exceeded my expectations. Based on comparable, similar, it wasn't just a guess, it was based on information. So 300 more. I did 5 printings. We ended up selling about 1,400 copies. This is a $35, $40 scholarly monograph. So I printed, 200, 200, $150, $285, and it sold $1,400. If I had printed offset at once, $1,500, I would have saved $6,000. But every time I went back to the printer, I had to do it offset, there's no print on demand, and that's how expensive. So that book succeeded at 1,400 copies, but my profit margin, it lost money because I didn't know what the right print was. You follow? I mean, literally, if I had printed 1,500 out of the gate, I would have made a ton of money. Instead, by printing to keep up with the demand, I lost money. Print on demand, there's no need to be, there's no disincentive to be conservative. So if that same scenario happened, I would probably lose maybe $1,000, $800, but then you get credits with Ingram for every unit you cost, that discounts. So it's almost the same quality and the same unit cost to do it print on demand as it is offset.
Is that because technology has changed or what?
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Oh, well, the print on demands in the old days were gruesome. And now you really, I mean, you can, it's a menu. You can say, you know, what you want. So that's allowed us to take on books
Yeah.
and not on the original print run take such an enormous financial risk. And that's, the other thing is Ingram has changed the industry. We were partners with Ingram, which is based in Nashville. They have printers in England, Australia, South America. So now, if we get an order in Australia or South America or England, print it up there, local shipping. Whereas before, our overseas sales have skyrocketed because a lot of our religion books are very of interest in Europe. But it was always kind of by shipping them by the boat or trying to figure out how to get them overseas, break even at best. So it eliminates a front risk. And we're not sitting, so in plenty of times the opposite has happened, where I print 1,500 and sell 600. And then I'm sitting on that excess inventory, which has a value. I have to write that off. And then I have to destroy that inventory. So you see how it protects us now? So I won't overprint ever again. That's not entirely true. But that's most presses books now. And then the other thing, just real fast, is that almost any press that wants to survive is digitizing its back. Kentucky and now Notre Dame, I have digitized our entire backlist of every book that's been published since we were founded. And now we're selling. Now libraries want ebooks. So, you know, and now, for example, you can get on Notre Dame, I have a partnership with Notre Dame's libraries, where anyone Notre Dame community, within Notre Dame email, faculty, staff, anywhere in the world can get access to our books for free. And at the bottom, because they're part of the Notre Dame community, it's not total open access, but restricted, what we call it. And at the bottom, there's a little button that says if you want to buy it, hit the button. And the sales of books that had been out of print and long dead are now starting to contribute revenue. So there's good news. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's the great question.
I would take 2 minutes of nostalgia. It's 1985 at Notre Dame. What indie press used to do is have tables in the library, all the old copies of Alistair McIntyre. That's an aftermarket, huge seller, but you get it for $2.
Alistair subsidized NotreAme Press for many years.
Who did?
Alistair McIntyre, after Virtue,
Yeah, right.
subsidized
But then
that
there was
press.
like John May on American Literature and Religion. This is how I got all the books by William F. Litt, who's one of my intellectual heroes. The other thing I was going to say is, when I go to New York, Barnes & Noble, right around 14th Street, you could get academic books for $5 in those days because the California overrun, University of California said, J. Hillis Miller had a book, It was like $5, and it was a beautiful hardcover. As a grad student in the 80s, it was grand. It was so easy to build a library
Oh,
because books were so. Now, you can't, even on Amazon. I mean, okay, true confessions, I do visit it occasionally, but you can't find a used copy for under, $50.
that's, because pretty soon no book is ever gonna go out of print.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
that's what's mad.
I mean, there's no reason to let them go out of print anymore.
Yeah. One thing I like that Amazon's doing is they do have author pages, so it's a place where people can visit and learn about the authors. It's like almost like a Wikipedia repository for author information as well.
I'll just illustrate one reason. Amazon, on the one hand, sells books, right? Everyone should be grateful for this. When I was in Kentucky, before Amazon became what it was, I mean, it was still just kind of this, I mean, Bezos was not a name, it was not, we're all kind of trying to figure out what the business model was. And this is just from my own personal experience. I signed a contract with Amazon when they just wanted signatures. They would agree to anything and they just wanted signatures. And this was part, as it turns out, of the business model. And they basically asked everyone for the same terms as borders. 55% discount, returns. It's the industry standard. Coming from the commercial sector, I did something a little different. I said, I'll increase your discount to 60, but you can't return it.
Ah,
Okay? You're saying? And over the course of the next 10 years, they became our number one vendor. Everyone's number one. And then a lawyer came to me through email, actually it was a letter, but it was certified.
Sorry.
So time to change our terms. I said, well, no, we have an agreement. We have a contract. I have a copy here. I'll email you a copy. And said, no. Not only are we changing the term, you're going to give us the 60% discount, and we're going to return books, and we're going to return all the books that we over-purchased. They had 112,000 units that they over-ordered, sitting in their warehouse because I wouldn't let them return them. And they were then strong-arming me to sign a contract that says they could return those 112,000 units, keep the same higher discount I had originally given them. And when I said no, actually what I said was, I need a human being because you're over-ordering these copies. I need a dedicated customer service person. Are you taking off now?
I gotta go.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming out.
I learned so much.
We'll be in, I'm glad to hear that.
Will you take my call now?
I always take calls, right?
Thank you.
Now, but I always think it's Ted if it comes from this area code, so I don't,
I know Ted. So you don't deserve it.
That doesn't help you.
No,
Thank you so, I learned so much, thank you.
my counteroffer was give me a dedicated human source person so that they won't overorder. Refused. They took every book Kentucky sold and they removed the buy buttons. New books, new authors. And that was it. You could purchase them from Amazon. And I went on for a year. And we're just small. We're nothing to Amazon. And that aggression, and the fact that they don't discriminate between scholarship, which I think is for posterity, which I think has a value that transcends sales, to dish laundry detergent.
Yeah.
So that's, and that kind of hyper sort of, you can't speak to humans, it's all driven by algorithms, and they create the terms. Is that good for scholarship? Is that good for posterity? That's why and I'm not.
Yeah,
Oh yes, they have great author pages, but if you don't do exactly what they want, we are subsidized nonprofits that publish books without sales markets, and they want greater discounts. They want more predatory, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't, so no more Amazon.
Wow.
I promise.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of.
I'll give you my access to my Amazon account so you can monitor.
No, well, it's a great business model if you're a consumer. It's half price and you get it the next day.
It's terrible for the ecology. I mean, there's a lot of pushback on what's happening with all the cardboard and the gasoline running things all over.
And that's, printers ran out of paper earlier this year because of Amazon's creating so many cardboard boxes. So there was a delay of 3 months on those
So
printing.
is there a place to buy that you consider, besides going directly to each publisher, buying directly from them?
I think that's the best way. And if there's a good local, I feel like local publishers will make a comeback. And they'll be niche, but they'll be kind of boutique. They used to be central. And again, we're disseminating ebooks now. It's a different ecology. I like that word because, and that's why I put this up. Do you think maybe you could get that one comment? I just want, now after what I just told you all, this was what I thought of yesterday on the plane. So one of the greatest, the things I've done since I've been in publishing is I've been publishing Alexander Solzhenitsyn's works in English for the first time, including his master novel, The Red Wheel, and his memoir. And this, I was wondering the other day how the reviews were. And you go to Amazon. And this is what it said from Stravos Lukos. He gave me 1 star. Too much for Kindle version. I like Solzhenitsyn. I don't like this price. Digital editions cost next to nothing to publish, so why should they be more than a few dollars, which still allow for a nice profit? Answer, capitalist greed. To hell with that, I'm sick of being gouged by hogs. I'm the hog. I thought Ted would like that.
I've always thought that.
That's really. Can you see the frustration? That's the disconnect. Cost, you have to copy edit ebooks, and it's one product.
Yeah. There's the other thing that's happening that I'm seeing a lot right now, and I actually did one on my second book, was an Audible book. They asked me to record.
Yep.
So.
Did you record it yourself?
I did, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we've got enough. No, I didn't personally record. I was in the studio. We brought in voiceover talent and had.
Yeah, no, we've done that.
But is that done in academic books?
Oh yeah, sometimes. Again, crossovers. I just thought it was really ironic to be called a capitalist hog, publishing a book on Solzhenitsyn that no other English publisher would undertake. That's not going to make us money on Amazon. And
It's your autobiography. The capitalist hog.
That's going to be my memoir, yep. Yeah, go now. Yeah.
Could you also talk about like subventions for publication?
Great question.
I don't think I really understand how it works. So if you could just start
What?
subventions.
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 What about the schools, the universities that require publication that don't have university presses? And that is a great, we call them free writers now. There's a term. More and more presses will, after the peer review process, after editorial board approval, they may ask if your institution has additional funding. Not to eliminate the risk,
Right.
but to help share it. So $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 allows us to publish it at $40 instead of $50. And, and if they're requiring you to get published in order to get tenure at an institution without a university press, the subsidy doesn't seem like an unreasonable request. The danger is it can look like vanity publishing. So if someone publishes a book and they write me a cover letter and says, I have $50,000 that I can put towards the publication of this book, and that happens. It's contrary to our very principle of the
So really after it's been accepted, it would be an appropriate conversation to have.
And more schools are doing that for the faculty.
What is the amount that is reasonable to ask? Like, let's say as a faculty member, I have a book under contract and I want to.
Again, it depends on the institution. Some places, state schools, they don't have it.
Right.
3,000 to 5,000 helps. That'll cover the copy editing and most of the proofreading. You know, it'll cover a third of that 15,000. And again, I won't have that conversation until the book, you know, I've determined that the book is a good fit. I've determined, you know, that it's been peer reviewed successfully and that it's been, you know, then I can say, but I'll never make it a condition of publication. But if you come through and say, I got $4,000 to help, or, you know, and then the other thing institutions are doing is helping with the indexing cost, for example. That doesn't really benefit us because that's your responsibility to create an index. That's an author's responsibility traditionally. But, you know, and to sort of let administrations know if you're going to require book publication, if that's still the coin of the kingdom, that they should be able to help support that. Because again, University of Maryland requires not one, but 2 books by university presses, not commercial houses, to become full professor. Maryland does not have a university press. And they're not the only one. So that's something to look into. I think the main thing I'm trying to get to, though, in terms of finding a publisher, because that's, you have to make the case for fit as much as you have to make the case for excellence or contribution. And you have got to anticipate these questions because we're going to ask them. You know, when we send out metadata for our books, libraries now want to know a couple of questions. Is it based on a dissertation? Yes or no? Yes or no? Not 60% of your dissertation or 20 or 100%. It's a filter. Doesn't mean they won't buy it. Is it based on conference volume? Why do they ask that? Because usually conference volumes are very inconsistent, not cohesive and uneven. Doesn't mean they won't buy it, but it's a filter. How much of you, so you need to be ready to tell the publisher how much you've revised your dissertation so that, you know, so these are the factors that I'm not trying to depress you. You missed all the depressing stuff. Your timing was perfect. You came in at the solution. But if you mention, first of all, make the editor feel like you have selected their press because you have anticipated these questions. Follow. Name other books published by that publisher that are comparable to your own. Name series. Let them know you've done some research. Doesn't guarantee publication, but if I get something that's not, you know, there are about, I don't know, 60 different things that we look at. We're not just evaluating excellence. And that's where people fall apart. And some people not knowing this, and this is what I worry about with the grad students and try to emphasize, is they'll send 10 letters out. Without this knowledge, without this information, without tailoring their proposals to the publisher, and they're going to get 10 rejections. And they're going to think there's something wrong with their book. And they're going to change it, or they're going to give up. When in fact, they just didn't make their case for fit. And that's why I wish more senior people, because senior faculty or senior people with grad students aren't aware of how these things are now. And they're giving the same advice 20, 30, 40 years ago. Yeah.
Well, so let's say that I've done my research and I know the 3 presses that are best suited to my field and have the best track record. One of the big debates that I've heard, and I wonder if this is resolved in some way, my mentor always says you never fine-tune your manuscript before you send it, because you want to get the peer reviews and do it only one time. So if it's a good book, they'll see it, but don't spend all the time revising. Where other people say you have to have a very polished because you're trying to impress the editors. Which one is the better?
And that is, you know, Ted, that's because you had one of the most brilliant mentors. I've published your mentors, you know, 3 times, and I had never thought about it those terms until today. But Paul told you that?
Yeah.
Paul, you came out of a different era. I don't know that that advice is good.
That's what I was asking.
I don't know, but I don't want to say it isn't either because there is no truth to that. You're gonna. I have never in 25 years published an unrevised dissertation based on the peer reviews. It's just never happened. So there's a lot of truth to what he said. But the danger you run is that you don't make it through that first round of peer review if you don't do those revisions. You follow. So it is. I mean, there's a risk involved. You don't say, okay, I'm going to get rid of the literature. That's what every district.
But that's how, I mean, you know, another piece of advice that he was a dissertation director was, don't write a dissertation on your first book. So I had no literature review, and it was not, and it wasn't changed by Kansas Press. It was almost exactly as the.
You're an exception. You are, because I know you and I know Paul. But a lot of advisors say the same thing, but they don't know what we're looking for in a book. You know what I'm saying? Paul did. Paul was different. I mean, I'm just saying, he was more. Your dissertation is one of the few books, because I read your book, based on your dissertation. But it's what I'm saying is it's not just a subjective matter of taste what a book is. And that's what a lot of professors think they're doing, is they're saying, well, if I like it, it's the book. But they're not anticipating what editors are thinking about it. And I don't think, you know, Paul demanded excellence, and he is kind of an exception. Sorry. But
generally speaking, you think it's better to have a very polished piece before it goes to outside review, before you even get to the publisher?
I think you need to, I think that in the current circumstances, you're going to get, we have 4 boxes, right? We send everything out for peer review, and there are 4 boxes. We have a whole list of questions we ask each reviewer to ask in the manuscript. So the first one is, I strongly recommend publication, as is. Second box is, I recommend publication, and I leave revisions to the discretion of the press and the author. The third box is, I do not recommend publication until these revisions are made. Fourth box is, I do not recommend publication. In order to proceed to the editorial board, I need 2 reviews that check the top 2. And that's all I'm saying, like, in terms of my needs to the board. And if you don't refine it enough, and you get the third box checked twice, that's either a reject or a revise and resubmit. That's, again, that's not a definite, but Paul's deception. That's what it's really.
Well, that's what I was wondering about.
Yeah, no, he's.
What are the standards?
So publishing of dissertations, this is relevant to me because I'm working on mine right now, and I'm really surprised to hear that lit review is the first thing that you excise. So can you, because I'm taking notes for my PhD cohort, by the way, so I'm sending this to 27 other people. So I just want to be able to give them this information as well.
Yeah, here's advice on that. It also depends upon the discipline. Right? I mean, different. And I should have done this first. I speak for Steve Wrinn. In my 25 years of experience, I'm not speaking universal truths. Every editor is different. I have come from a commercial background. I have been a director, but I've always acquired books, which is kind of an unusual combination. You know, I have a different set of skills and background. But in my experience, you will need to explain to a publisher how you have revised that dissertation. And I don't know your field, I mean, we chatted very, very briefly before, but in a published book, it's assumed that you know the secondary literature. Right? And why do some publishers put really strict word counts on their books. I do not. I think some books require a longer treatment, but there are certain presses you'll encounter that say 80,000 words. You come in at 83,000 words, you gotta cut 3,000, they're not going to take it. That's because there's so few variables we can control and cost. One of them is length, ink, paper. And that's where those things come from. So that's, the literature review is just one of those things. I've known editors who wouldn't let you mention your dissertation committee in your acknowledgments as your dissertation. They had to remove the word dissertation. But anticipate the fact that a filter is this based on a dissertation? My other bit of advice, besides the literature review, the other thing I say in general is, you're now, here's the other thing is people say, and I've heard it before, I've written this as a book, and I say, no, you've written it for an audience of 3 people on your committee. And that's my typical comeback to that. And it needs to go out on more of an intellectual limb. It really does. It really, it has to make more of an argument. It has to, it has to engage a broader audience than just your dissertation committee, because often your dissertation committee is 3 people who don't agree on anything, and you're trying to please all of them. So you want to sharpen your arguments. And the other thing that I've been recommending to graduate students is, as you're working on your dissertation, do additional research. If you come across something that may be relevant down the road, make a note of it. Remember it. I, as an editor, if you come to me and you say, I want to study religious persecution in Massachusetts from 1500 to 1510, my first gut instinct is to say, why can't you go from 1500 to 1900? I'm going to want you to expand it. It expands the audience. So the dissertation is a different exercise that you need to do according to the demands of your committee. But a book, we want to expand that audience as much as possible. We're not talking thousands and thousands, although sometimes, that expansion will attract a substantially larger audience. Does that answer the...
Yeah, wonderful, thank you.
Are there other questions?
Do you expect now for authors to go out and market their own book? And, for instance, one thing, I don't remember if you did the Tevi Troy
I did.
book, but
I did the one
in the series that we did.
Yeah,
right?
I did. That was,
Tevi Troy did something that I found very gauche at the time. He was out. He got George Will to write a column on it, which I thought was utterly inappropriate.
I remember thinking that wasn't gauche. I remember thinking that was brilliant.
And then, I don't know if you, I think you.
I forgot about that.
And the Distrito got Glenn Beck to, all of a sudden, my
That I thought was
editorial series, that made more money than the rest of the books in the series combined. But those are both people who saw it as their role to go out and get people to write reviews for it, sometimes in academic journals.
Ted,
And that just seems to me to be a special pleading. And
we'll have to talk then if you ever want to publish with me again, because you're going to get your own website. We're going to put you on Twitter. We're going to do Instagram. I'm having my Mocha Cafe here with Steve. We're talking about my book. No, the more you self-promote, that's your network. And now, salespeople, marketing people, their expertise is social networks. Yeah.
Alan Jacobs at Baylor has, he published a book just last year, in the year of our Lord 1943, and he starts talking about it in his blog, and has a web page for it and all of that, but also has the reviews coming in and all of that. I knew about that. I had that pre-ordered from Amazon. I'm sorry, I won't do that anymore. But I had it pre-ordered, and a half a year in advance, because I knew it was coming out, and it generates that kind of interest. And there's others that do it. And they don't have to do it in gauche ways. I mean, it's just very simple. Sort of, if you've got any kind of following, or any kind of audience, you can.
There's a difference between networking in the sense of getting it out to a community and then actually asking people to write something favorable in a major
They
publication.
don't have to write it favorably, that's up to them. But to
Well,
ask
but
them is not.
that's what they're doing,
Ted,
right?
I admire that instinct. You remember the time when it was considered gauche for lawyers to advertise?
It is, in fact, gauche.
Yes, okay. And so we're talking about something else, but who's going to survive in this climate? And the lead title in our newest catalog is on Colin Powell. That's already had an op-ed. It's not even available yet. Op-ed in the Hill. It's been asked, op-eds. NPR is interested in doing a, and we're doing this before the book's even available. And yes, the more you can help, and the more you can actually articulate a marketing platform. Because we sent you, guess what? A marketing questionnaire that's very detailed. There's a lot of books being published, and there's a lot of competition, and there's a lot of noise. We need the author's help. And, it's the age-old dilemma, would you rather be gauche or E?
There's Gloria 16. Gloria 16.
I missed that. This is why we worked on a series together for 9 years. And these are the conversations we have on Fridays, So, are there other questions? If I clarified at least how to approach publishing.
What are the fields that you think Notre Dame 5 years from now will be known for?
Well, we're going to continue publishing in theology, medieval studies, Irish studies, areas in which we're really quite strong. But, one of the reasons press has changed is I've been doing this 25 years. I have a stable of authors and friends and networks. I've been going to certain conferences for years, and I've seen people go from grad students to junior, so you're going to see a more American political thought. You're going to see the kinds of books I've been publishing over time. Foreign policy is something I'm just very, over time, well connected in. But I'm not going to be dropping any of those other areas. The only issue with those areas is, are they expanding? And I was hired, I think, for 3 reasons in Notre Dame. One was, it was in really bad financial straits. I know that I have to improve its financial position. Not every press, and this is another thing that faculty need to know about in people getting published. A university press does not necessarily reflect the prestige and reputation of its host institution. There are presses that, I always bring up the example of University Press of Kansas. In my 25 years, the best publisher in American political thought. That was the bar for everyone. Oxford, Cambridge, whatever. Currently, if you're working in African studies, that's the press among people publishing in African history is Ohio University, Ohio State, Ohio University Press, right? So each press has its own areas of excellence and expertise and prestige, and faculty committees, tenure committees, often don't, they see the name of the press, and they assume it must be prestigious, or but faculty tenure committees need to be educated on, the intricacies of, what it means to be published in some of these presses that aren't necessarily prestigious institutions. My situation was the opposite. I'm in a very prestigious institution, but the press has never sort of matched that reputation, and that was the second part of my job. So really to make it more robust and more global. And that's so.
Do you deal with agents in the academic world at all?
We turn the camera off. No, I got Amazon. No. If we can avoid it, no. once again, we do publish trade books. I have worked with agents, but an agent won't bring a book to a publisher unless they think they can make an adequate cut from the royalties. So how many how many university presses can generate sales? And in a way that makes it beneficial financially to the agent? The answer is almost never. And what tends to happen, Ted, is that the agent will get involved. They think we're Random House, they think we're Penguin, they have those expectations, and then we do what we do, the way we do it best, and the agent just criticizes us for not being Penguin, right? And we say that at the very beginning. Most of the times, authors who I publish with agents, and it's usually very amicable. They just say, can we deal without the agent? And usually the agents will approve the contract, but they've become more savvy and they know, not to make demands.
So the problem is those crossover books, right?
Yeah.
Like the one that we talked about with Bruce,
Yeah.
where it could be an academic press because it's got that quality, but it's not really the main. And so there are some trade presses that really don't consider manuscripts that aren't brought by agents.
By agents, right.
And then there are academic presses that really don't want to deal with agents at all. And so if you got that crossover, and it could be the author's intention is to find an academic press that still gets an audience that's bigger than the normal one without worrying about whether it's a 50,000 seller. If they can get a 10,000 seller out of it, then they're happy with it, right?
Yeah, 10,000, I've never complained about a 10,000 seller. I've never complained about a 2,000 seller.
I'm talking about the point of view of the author. The
Right.
author can say, I'm not as interested in getting, because I have an academic post that I really want those people to know.
Yes,
But
that's
I
right.
also think this can be read by a lot of other people, and so I want somebody who can get it out to another audience. And for those people, it's almost, this is the only experience I've had with this manuscript, is that you can't hardly get into the trade presses without an agent.
And finding an agent is like finding a publisher. You find comparable books published wherever trade house, and you can always find the agents, And if you have a colleague who works with an agent, ask them for an introduction. These are, networks are important. Friendships are important. When I advise people to write a cover letter, typically for their first book, drop the name of someone if you know them. If someone writes me and says, my mentor Ted McAllister encouraged me to contact you, well, that goes into the reject pile. But if it's someone else that I trust, no, I'm getting punchy now.
What about?
But no, seriously, Ted, if someone says that and you work with me, I'm going to look at it closer because our friendship, our network, our connection, our bond is important. There's reason. Make it harder to put it in that reject pile.
Right.
The agent stuff, if you're after money, you're in the wrong profession. That's, it's...
So let me ask one last question.
Sure.
You're coming up with, you said you have a manuscript due at a certain time. So you finish it, it goes into an academic press. How much do you want her to be involved in things like cover, in paper, in print, the kind of print used? Because I found it to be quite dramatic. Some really don't. They'll listen to you, but they're going to do their own thing, and others seem to really want you involved in it because it sort of involves you in the larger process.
Again, that's a great question, but I fall into one of the reasons I think I have loyal authors is because I'm very collaborative. I want authors to be happy. I want them to approve titles and cover designs, and I discuss the price with them, and I answer questions so that there are no surprises. I eliminate surprises. But sort of coming to a concert of expectations with an author, if I can't do that in the beginning, I will sever that relationship. If an author is just insistent that I don't know how to do my job, because their book is so brilliant and important that I, you know, and that's what again, I come back to the first statement. It's not intuitive how we make our decisions, but it's completely rational. And I would never do something that wasn't in the best interest of the press and the book. But if an author has expectations that are unrealistic, it never ends well. And I'm gauging that for the first time we talk. And yeah, some people love it, but some presses, you don't see the book until you see the book. You get your author copies, and that's the first time you see the cover design.
Yeah.
One of my selling points at Roman, at Kentucky, and now Notre Dame, you can publish anywhere, but you're going to enjoy publishing here, and you're going to have more input here than you would at Cambridge or Oxford, you know, wherever. That's, some authors crave that. Some authors want to turn in a manuscript and forget about it. They don't want to market it or do anything for it. You know, that's not uncommon. But it is, you know, we have 50 slots a year. I've got to make so much revenue. We've had a couple good years. And those, you know, that's the roots of the decision almost every one of your acquisitions editors is thinking. So if I've done anything helpful, it's so you know how to communicate your proposal when the time comes. Because they're not just saying it's a beauty contest and I love it.
Well, thank you so much for, I really appreciate, you know, when we were talking about doing this, he said, I want to come in January. I want to get out of South Bend in January, and now we put it where you can see the ocean, and now we're here.
I can't even see the
But I'm sorry.
But I see seagulls every once in a while.
I'm sorry about the weather, but I
Thank you
so
for your
appreciate you
attention.
doing this for us.
I appreciate it.